So I want to record a video today on a topic that I am still learning about. I have always considered myself a fairly ruthless writer. And what I mean by that is that I have very low attachment to ideas. At least that's what I thought. And then I started working on this book that had this great idea in it. And it wasn't until I had been writing it for 2 years that I realized that that great idea was the very reason I couldn't finish it. Hi, if you're new to this channel, my name is Seth. I don't typically update from the beach, but I'm on vacation, and so here I am. I'm a full-time fantasy author, and I make these YouTube videos because there are a lot of bad books out there, and I don't want yours to be one of them. We've all heard it said, kill your darlings. But what does that actually mean? In the writing world, that means that the ideas that you think are awesome, that are great, might not be as great as you think they are, and that by eliminating them, you are actually going to find that your work gets better. Writing is a curious thing because there is no limit to what you can include. And what that means at the end of the day is that your work is defined by what you don't include. It's defined by what you choose to exclude from your book. There's no limit to what you're allowed to put in it, but the choice of what to put in it really determines how good it's going to be. And so this idea of kill your darlings is that you might have attachment to certain ideas that simply do not work. And by keeping them, you are harming the final product. And like I said, this is something that I am still learning. 22 books in, and I'm still having to kill my darlings. I have spent the last 2 years working on a book that I just love. I love the idea of it, and the execution has been fun. But I realized on this trip that I have a particular attachment to a singular idea that is ruining the whole thing. And so I want to unpack that a little bit and then give you some practical tips on how you can kill your darlings without it hurting too much. So what's the idea that I've been holding on to that is just ruining this book? It's a twist. See, when I had the original conception of this story, there was a specific twist in it, and this book is going to come out, so I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to spoil anything, but I was very committed to this idea of a twist that the reader would discover only after it had happened. But in order to do that, in order to deliver that twist, I needed to eliminate a lot of the information that the reader got before the event took place. Well, as I've worked on this novel, it has gotten harder and harder to navigate around this twist. And because I have tried to make that twist sort of the focal point of the story, I've had to take shortcuts and I've had to choose to exclude things that would enrich the experience of the reader. So rather than simply writing the best possible story I could, I realized that I've been sacrificing all sorts of really strong characters and strong situations, all for the sake of satisfying this twist. And the result has been terrible. I haven't even been able to write the twist well. I have this twist in my head that I'm really, really interested in delivering for the reader because I think it would just be really cool. But with how the story is set up, there isn't actually a way to deliver it. Every single person that I've given the story to read has come back with the same sort of meh reaction to the twist that I thought was so cool. But because I've been unwilling to let go of it, because I've been unwilling to just say, you know what, this isn't working, let's try something else, it's really stymied my ability to write the best book I can write. And so one of the things that I'm going to be doing this next month is I'm going to be killing my darling. I'm going to be eliminating the twist from the book. I'm going to be changing the structure of it so that the reader is in on it from the beginning. I'm not going to focus on the twist itself as the main payoff, but instead I'm going to focus on the success or failure of it as the point of conflict and the point of tension in the book. So the reader is going to be in on it the whole time, and instead of trying to hide information from the reader so that the twist is more powerful or stronger, I'm instead going to make the reader a co-conspirator. And again, the tension is going to just come from, do we succeed or do we fail? And I think that's going to be a lot cleaner. I think it's going to be a lot better. But let's talk a little bit about, in general, this idea of kill your darlings and how you can apply it to your writing. At the end of the day, your first idea is probably not going to be your best idea. Often, books come from singular ideas. We have a flash of a scene or some sort of interaction, or we make some sort of connection and we think to ourselves, man, this would make a great book. And then we start writing. And once we get into it, often what emerges is that the ideas that come later are just better than the idea we first had. But if we're so attached to that initial idea that we can't let it go, we're going to find ourselves in this position where we really need to kill our darling. We really need to kill that first idea from which everything else sprung, rather than continuing to hold on to it with dogged determination. See, the issue is not whether the idea is good, it's how good is it. The ideas that we want to incorporate into our stories are the ideas that other people find best. Because that's what's going to keep our readers engaged. That's what's going to keep our readers reading. If we're just focused on sort of what we like in a story, and focusing on what we like in a story is really important. But what's more important is focusing on what other people like, because that's how we sell books. And if you want to be an author, selling books is pretty important. So how do we do this on a practical level? Well, one of the things that I like to do is just give other people power. Let other people decide. You know, it's way easier to kill my darlings when I am not the one who has to make the final cut. If somebody else says, you know, this just isn't working, I've found it very helpful to say, okay, I'm going to take your advice. Now, obviously, you do this with people who you trust, but you say, okay, I'm going to take your advice. I'm going to cut it. It's gone. And so this is where having an editor can be really, really helpful. Having somebody who's professional, whose job it is to identify these weak points and identify what needs to be cut, it can be really helpful. Now, I've sort of built in an iterative editing process to my workflow. But if you don't have that, then employing an editor, whether that's your friend or somebody who's paid professionally to do it, can just be a great way to start eliminating those ideas. But ultimately, it's just going to be up to you and your ability to distance yourself from your work to understand that your ideas are separate from your identity. But let me know down in the comments below if you've ever had to kill one of your darlings and whether the ideas you came up with afterwards were better or not.